Before I even get started, I really appreciate your time. I know you're like in the middle of the season and everything, so genuinely
So
thank you for coming on the show. It means a lot.
yeah, for sure, Nolan. Of course, happy to do
Yeah.
it.
Also, what timing, by the way? Yesterday's game. Like, let's start there. I have notes to go over, but
Yeah,
crazy game against the Pirates. It looked like you guys. Pirates had a guy on third. Looked like they were going to win the game. It was going to be another tough loss, and then
yeah.
you guys get the out you need, and then of course Mr. Wisdom comes in with the home run. First of all, again, this is kind of like an improv on my notes, but I've always been curious. Like, obviously, at the highest level of baseball in the major leagues, is there a different feeling than when you hit a home run, even if it's a regular season game and it has that much significance to it than just hitting, any home run it's big that gives your team a lead? Is there a difference in that, or is it just like you kind of got ice in your veins? It all kind of feels the same.
I mean, yeah, and the situations definitely differ, and the feelings differ too. Um, but I think, before it happens, especially in that one, I wasn't really thinking about that. I wasn't thinking of kind of the result and where it would put us. But after the fact, then it kind of dawns on you and you realize it and you're like, okay, cool, like give us more of a cushion. Because runs are a premium in this game,
Right.
for sure, especially late in the game. So yeah, the feelings are a little different, but when it's a big homer like that towards the end, they definitely feel a lot different and feel, I would say, cooler in a way.
Do you feel like there's been so many, again, I've been a diehard Cubs fan my whole life, and this year feels like there's just been so many more of these close games. Does
Yeah.
that ever, like, I feel like that helps come hopefully playoff time, but does that ever, like, do you ever get used to that feeling of like these one-run games going into the ninth and hoping that your bullpen can hang through, or hoping you can get a hit from you or another player? Do you ever get used to the feeling of needing something in a close game rather than these 15-0 blowout wins or something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely helps our confidence in those games, especially when we're coming through and we're winning those tight games. It just adds to the fact that, or to that feeling, when you get in that situation, you're like, all right, we're coming through, and X pitcher is gonna come shut it down, or X player up at bat's gonna come through for us.
Right.
Just adds to that confidence that we are gonna pull through and we are gonna shut down that inning or get that big knock. So yeah, like you said, they kind of add up over the season, and the more times we come out with the W, the better off, obviously. But I'd say the better we're going to be well equipped, later in the year.
Yeah, more confident for sure in those situations.
Mhm.
Okay, that was like my improv little sort of thing because it was like the greatest feeling yesterday watching that game, and I was like, "This is my guy right here." Literally right before
Thank
he
you.
goes on the show, I was like, "What timing?"
Thank
Um,
you.
Welcome in everybody to a very special edition of Call Your Shot. Just started this podcast. The first guest, we have some other guests lined up. We got Pedro Strop. I'm sure you're familiar with him. Jaquan Brisker's coming on. Got Fred Taylor. But I was most excited about this interview because this is the first guest, and hopefully when this thing blows up, I always look at this as, you're one of my favorite Cubs players. So,
Thank you. Yeah.
very, very grateful to have you on. But
Thank you.
again, I will be doing the regular episode for those listeners, just the regular NBA rundown, MLB power rankings, all that stuff for later. This is just going to be a one-on-one interview for those listening. So your game yesterday, player of the game for sure, 3 for 4, that home run, RBI, a walk. But the emphasis was that 10th inning to tie the game, to take the lead. I already asked you about the pressure in this situation, but um, in all seriousness, you're a huge fan favorite, and for the Cubs. Like I'm sure you know that. Humbly, I'm sure you know that. Like this is a big sports city.
Hmm.
People love their Cubs. Whether they're winning or losing this year. Thankfully, I believe, and I'm sure you believe, this is a very very solid team.
No doubt.
Um, so let's start there. You played for three teams. You played for St. Louis, Texas, who just came off the World Series win, and then now Chicago Cubs. Putting you on the spot here. How would you? Cubs is the best, right? Cubs is the best
Of
franchise.
course.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Cool. I love that. I thought that was gonna be
Yeah.
a trap question you weren't gonna want to answer, but yeah. We're very much against those Cardinals fans. There's a lot of those back home. Um, It feels like the Cubs also, though, again, biasly, I feel like this is a very well like traveling fan base. It feels like every single time, it doesn't matter if it's a Wednesday 7:30 game against like a small market team like the Mariners or something. I feel like there's always a sea of red and blue Cubs fans. Do you personally, or do you as players notice that, or are you just so locked into the game that like it's kind of just a blur to who's there and who's watching? Because I know you probably have to ignore the cheers and the jeers when you're going through a slump versus when you're playing really well. But do you notice like how well the Cubs fan base travels?
Oh, totally, yeah. Yeah, the Cubs fans travel super well. I feel like every away game, it's almost pretty much split with Cubs fans and then, whoever we're playing. And you definitely take notice too when they start letting out the "Let's go Cubs" chants, and
Yeah,
you got the Cubs fans, hooting and hollering. So, yeah, I mean, this fan base is awesome. They support you. They always have your back, and like you said, they travel super well. So it's always fun going on the road because you always got a great fan base to support you.
you guys are in a brutal NL Central division. I mean, it's really, really tough. I mean, the Brewers are always right there. The Reds are coming along. The Cardinals are having a bad year, but obviously they've been notoriously good with their 11th World Series. How because of some things that have happened in the past where you guys have lost the division towards the end of the season, is that kind of in your mindset? I know you kind of have to forget about that because you can't harp on that. It's a new season, a new day. But does that still kind of stick in your mind where you're like, we can't let that happen again? We can't squander a division lead, even though right now you're, I think, like what, a half game or a game back of the Brewers. But do those division games matter that much more to you given those circumstances of previous past seasons?
I mean, I would say yes and no. Yes to the fact that the division games mean a whole lot more, right? And we
Yeah.
can feel that intensity, we feel that environment as players. And then I would say no in the sense that we don't like say like, oh yeah, 2 years ago or 3 years ago or however many years
Right.
like we lost it. It was just like we just know that feeling at the end of the year, like last year when it comes down to like the very last game and it's kind of out of our hands, it's up to another team.
Yep.
Don't, that's not a good feeling to have. You kind of want to be in control of your own destiny in a way. And so to the fact that the division games really matter and each game matters, whether it's the beginning of the year, April 1st, or, the end of the year at the end of September coming down the stretch. It's every win is super important and especially division.
Right. Let me ask you this. Do you ever feel, like bad for the other teams, not because of the record per se, but for like the Brewers or the Reds, just because, two NL Central rivals, they could be, 162-0, but at the end of the day, they have to live in Milwaukee and Ohio. Like, do you ever feel bad about that getting to compare to living in Chicago, living in the best city?
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, Chicago is great. Yeah, Chicago is a great city. Wrigley's iconic. It's a great place to play.
yeah,
The fans are incredible. The Chicago food scene is incredible. The Chicago
yeah.
summers are amazing. I can't speak to being, living in Milwaukee or Ohio. I've never done that, so I don't know. I will say going and
I'm
playing
sure
in
it's awful.
Milwaukee, going and playing in Milwaukee is awesome because it's so close to Chicago and the Chicago fans really show out there.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like a true 50-50, maybe even so a little bit more Cubs fans. That place gets super loud when we're doing well.
I would argue the Brewers wouldn't have a team if it weren't for the Cubs being so close because I feel like it's always it's jokes aside, it's all Cubs fans there with the Brewers. Like they have solid teams every year, but I feel like it's almost always Cubs fans, like you mentioned. Um, Going back to this quick question I was going to ask you, you mentioned the Chicago food scene, how great it is. What's your go-to? That's always my question for Chicagoans.
Yeah, good question. That's a super good question. And I feel like each week my answer would change.
Right.
But I would say like some common places that we've hit up are Pizza Portofino, right there
Okay.
on the river. Yeah. Coda de Volpe, which is, on Southport.
Yep.
That's one of our kids' favorites. We like Chicago Cut. I mean, I know there's like hole in the wall places that are amazing. Chichio Mio we went to last year, which was an incredible experience. We did Rosemary, which is awesome. So I mean, each week I feel like I could pick a new
Yeah.
restaurant and it could be my favorite,
Y-
just
y-
because.
You're naming all places that are not necessarily hold the wall for people who lived here, but like those are places that not common. Like most answers I get are like, like Portillo's or like, like
The
Giordano's or stuff.
Malnati's or
And there's
something,
nothing
yeah.
wrong with that.
Right.
I will say I'm not a deep dish guy. Like it's like I feel like that's like the hot take, but like I
Mm.
prefer the thinner crust pizza. I think the deep dish is
Yeah,
a little heavy, but sue me.
that's
Um,
all right.
um, I wanted to ask you a question. Again, at your level of not only playing in the major leagues, but being as good as you are. What is like a two questions here? One, what does on a game day like today, for example? I know you have a 3-game road trip against the Braves, a really tough team, a World Series contender. But aside from the talent of that team, what does like a outside of doing this interview here, what is like a pre like setup? Like what is like a pre before the game? Because the game's at night, right? It's like a 7:20 or something. So like
That's
what
right,
do you
yeah.
do before that to get ready? And then what do you do post game afterwards typically?
You mean like at the field or prior to going to the field?
Both actually,
Okay.
prior and also post game. Yeah.
Yeah, good question. So I'm a big coffee guy. I love coffee, love getting up and
Okay.
walking to find coffee. So, before this call, even I say we, me and Jan Gomes, and then sometimes Jameson, he's another big coffee guy, and some other guys. We usually walk to a coffee shop, try to find a good, nice pour over coffee, and then just kind of hang out, talk shop, and then come back to our room, do what we got to do, whether that's, shower, get ready, call the families, whatever it is. And then we get on a bus and get to the field. And that's where we kind of have lunch and kind of get your body ready, whatever treatment you need for that day. It could be nothing. You could just be hanging out at the field,
Yeah.
talk shop with the guys. It's always nice to be around the team and, be with the guys. And then so before the game, when you're at the field, guys' routines are different, right?
Right.
Everyone has their own thing that they like to do to get ready. For me, it's pretty simple. I just get the body going, hitting the cage, and then I keep my routines very simple and ultimately like saving my bullets, if you will, for the game and when I'm
Yeah.
on. Um, and then, BP happens and it's, we take ground balls during BP and you're playing catch and throwing to different bases. And for me, when I play so many different positions, BP is important to me because, I take reps at third,
Yep.
take reps at first, and then take reps in the outfield. And it's just, being well equipped, all those positions. So BP is important for me in terms of that. And then play the game. So then after the game, some guys, need more treatment after the game, whether that's getting your leg muscles, worked on, rubbed out. So you're ready to go for the next day, whether that's cold tubs, you name it, eat and then eating obviously. And then, I think sleep is super, super important too. So, making sure we're getting enough sleep, getting enough rest, so that way for
Definitely.
the next day, you're ready to go. I mean, because it's every day, right? You're going right back to back to back to
And,
back,
and,
and
and that's
it's
what I was
not
going to
like
say is baseball to me for a couple reasons. First of all, I think it's the hardest sport because, in my opinion, like if you give someone probably not the best analogy, but if you give someone who's like maybe shot a basketball 5 times in their life but doesn't have great form, if you give them 100 half court shots that probably hit a couple, I don't think someone with even a great athleticism stance could hit a four seam a fastball coming at
yeah.
you, no matter how talented you are. Like baseball, it's so much hand-eye coordination. There's so much going on, situational awareness, and
Yeah.
also what I was going to say is 162 games. That's if you don't make the playoffs. Very few off days. So I feel like your body, mentally, physically, you really can't afford any non-good sleeping days, any rough days. So you really
Yeah.
have to make sure you're taking care of your body.
Yeah, you just become like accustomed to having some general soreness going on like each day. And that becomes the norm. And so you just learn to play with that and get moving with that stuff. But yeah, it's just that's the hardest part is just the everyday. But that's also the beauty in it too, when when you're not playing well or whatever, you're like, okay, well, I have a game tomorrow. I got another chance to be
Right.
great. That's like the beauty in it. You don't have to wait a few days.
Do you ever feel like this is like I'm about to be hot this game, or do you ever have that feeling, or does it just kind of happen? Like I know you can't predict. Okay, I'm going to hit like a 10th inning, home, but like, do you ever have a feeling like this is my day? Like I'm hitting him really hard in batting practice, or is it just one of those things? Is just like it maybe it's the opposite even, where you're like I'm not playing so well, and then it comes to the game and you're like I'm on my game, you know?
Yeah, I would say, it's a mixture of that. Yeah, just because I feel like every day you have to go in knowing that you're the best player on the field.
Yep.
And just having that belief in yourself. I think that's super important. Especially in a game of failure when you're going to fail more times than not.
Yeah.
You got to maintain that self-confidence. And then, some days when you're like, all right, yeah, I just like I feel off today, but those are sometimes I think you go out there and you get 3, 4 knocks, and you're like, because you're not having that super high expectation and you're not trying to force things, you're like, well, this is what I got today. So then you go out there and you're like, hey, I was nice and relaxed and calm and at peace with where I was, and you go out there and get a few knocks. You're like, it worked out well.
You kind of just transitioned to a question I was going to ask later, but getting to you personally, like you're a very integral part. This Cubs team is very interesting to me because it's almost like a non-superstar filled team, but there's so many great, unbelievable, good players. It plugs together so well. Um, when there are players, like for example, like a Nico Horner, right? An integral part of this team, a second baseman. Um, if he's having a slump, like, is there something that you or someone else specifically says to them, or do you know that he'll be okay without that? He doesn't need that pep talk, or there's some guys that like they really get down on themselves. They need someone to tell them, hey, like you're that guy. You gotta,
Yeah,
yeah,
good question. Yeah, Nico's a guy that he's gonna figure it out. He's gonna come through. But he also, we also like to chat, and that those conversations happen organically, right? And it could just be, sitting at the table eating lunch or eating pregame, or it could be in the cage, or it could be during batting practice, and you just have the conversations. And he's probably just talking what he's going through, and you're listening. It may not even be giving advice and just be listening. He just needs to get something off his chest, and we're using Nico for example because you brought him up. It could be any guy though. It could be anyone on the team, and I think that's part of being a good teammate too, is being there for those guys. It's striking up conversations, it's listening, it's pulling each other up. Because this game is hard and it's long, like we've said. Um, and each day, sometimes maybe you need something different. Maybe you need somebody to boost you up, boost that confidence. And maybe some days you just need someone to listen to you. You don't need anyone to like give you advice. You're like, hey,
right.
I need to get this off my chest and out of
Reinvent,
my head.
yeah,
And then some days it's breaking down video together, and it's like, hey, like you've seen me a lot, like what looks different, or so you're just
yeah.
each day can be different, and each person is different with what they need. So being a good teammate is, I think, being present for that person, being present each day when you go in there, because you never know who might need what that day.
Which, by the way, have you wished Nico happy birthday yet today?
I have not, no, but
Oh
I
wow, I beat you to it.
yeah.
He's not going to see my message, but I still like I'm gonna take credit for that because I saw that on the I think it was on the Cubs page. I was like I'm gonna send him a DM, so I can say that I beat Patrick Wisdom in wishing 27th birthday to Nico Horner. I'm gonna that's gonna be my credit I'm
Yeah,
gonna take.
dang,
Uh,
yeah, you beat me on that. Shoot.
okay, so a few more things, really, guy. Quick questions for you. So
Yeah,
you guys, first of all, quick shout out to the sponsor, Vintage Club Clothing at vintageclubclothing.com. They're the official sponsor of the show. I forgot to shout them out. So they have great Cubs gear. You can never have enough Cubs gear. Am I right?
right.
You guys are off to a really good start, though, 24-17. Again, there have been some bullpen issues. Let's just leave it at that. If it weren't for some of those games, you guys would be even further ahead. So you guys know how talented this team can be, even at 7 games above 500. Last year at this time, after 41 games, so about a quarter of the way through the season, you guys were 19-22, and you were on a 3-game losing skid. This team, just from watching, is a much better team. What has been the difference, though, between this year's team and last year's team, outside of a guy I'm going to bring up in a second in Shota Imanaga, but outside of the gym that he is, what else has been the difference between the significant difference between this team's success this year compared to last year's kind of slightly under mediocre team?
I would say the culture here is shifted to expecting to win. I would say this year's different in the way that, if we lose, maybe we get blown out or we lose a tight game.
Right.
We come in the next day with belief that we're going to win that night. No one's really hanging their heads. No one's like, oh no, here we go again. It's like, hey, we're gonna win tonight. Like last night
Yeah.
was last night. We know what we did wrong or we know what we did right. We're learning from it. But we still have that expectation to win each time we come to the ballpark. And I think that's a difference maker, right? Because now we have that consistent mindset, that consistency in the culture and the energy and the vibe in the clubhouse, because that's super important. So it's very positive in there. It's very winning based.
Right.
Pulling each other up and the belief in one another is constantly there, regardless of that night before. So I think that's huge for us right now.
And shout out, like I mentioned, like the bullpen has had their issues, but there's also been, and I know I feel like every fan base of every sport always uses this as an excuse, but injuries have plagued this team insanely, and not just any injuries. Like every player is important. I mean, first game of the season, we lose, the ace Justin Steele. Obviously now, thankfully, he's back. Cody Bellinger goes out. Asaya Suzuki goes out. You entered the season on the IL, which first of all, I was going to ask you about that. You had that back issue. What exactly was that issue, and how close are you to 100% at this point?
Yeah, just threw my back out essentially. Lifting some weights, kind of a freak thing, if you will. But yeah, I'm pretty much right at 100%, if not, 99%.
You looked
So
100% yesterday for sure. For sure.
yeah,
That was
thank you.
100%.
Yeah, I feel great. I feel fine. So yeah, and Dan's been going on the IL too, another guy to mention to that list.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just kind of like, unfortunate things, but hey, glad it's still early in the season. And I think more like smart play, so we have them for the long haul.
Right.
Because that's important too. And I know he's playing through it for a little bit, but it'll be nice to get him some rest, get right, and then, have him springboard right back into it.
Couple more questions for you. Actually, well, I have a few more. So one, I just talked about Shota Imanaga. So he's been unbelievable. In my opinion, he's not only going to be, as of right now, rookie of the year. I think he's NL Cy Young favorite. Like, I mean, not even just saying he's a Cubs fan. He's just been outstanding. On the mound tonight against another good pitcher in Atlanta too. So that should be a really good pitcher's duel. Um,
Mhm.
how has he been able to? And I know that you're not a pitcher, but I've been curious about this. How has he been able to adapt so well with the language barrier? Like, if you're trying to learn from, for example, from Ace, like an Ace Justin Steele, how is he able to learn and adapt with that barrier there? I know he has his translator, but I feel like it has to make things a lot more difficult. And the second part of that is, how have you guys really helped him adapt to? Because he seems like such a fun guy and a very relatable guy. But like, how have you been able to adapt him to not only Chicago but to the Chicago Cubs culture and make him feel at home to where he's clearly feels comfortable in what he's doing and what he's doing is working. But I'm just kind of curious as how that works.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is on him. He's integrated himself really well with the pitching staff. He's always out there watching other guys throw. And I know the Cubs pitching coaching staff and department did a really good job of bringing him in along with his translator and like
Yep.
kind of going over everything and like what things mean. And but also them understanding what his feels are, what like his terminology is, and how they can coincide with um what they're talking about, because like you said, that language barrier is there. Uh,
Yeah, it's
so,
difficult.
I think it's just a constant work with the translator, with Shota, with the pitching department, and just still learning each other and what, may Shota may be feeling or what he's thinking, and then what the pitching department is
Right.
feeling or thinking or seeing. But it's also relying on Shota's strength because he is an excellent pitcher.
He's just so good. He's just so
He's
good. It doesn't even
phenomenal, right?
matter.
And so it's part of it's like letting him go out there and do his thing.
Yeah.
But I think I got to give a lot of credit to Shota because he's integrated himself well. He's been super open. He's been super willing to get to know people, immerse himself in the clubhouse, and just be himself. And I think that goes a long way. And I think we see that translate to his comfortability on the field and amongst us.
And I have a theory, and this is one of my favorite questions to ask because I want to. You're one of the only people who would know this. I feel like Shota. Okay, so when you guys played the Red Sox on Sunday Night Baseball, they did a fairly long interview, and the translator was a lot more stern. Shota's kind of laughing, smiling. I feel like Shota likes to mess with us a lot in like a fun way. But I don't know if like that's a real thing or if I'm imagining that. I feel like he has a really good sense of humor and he's like joking because he was on also MLB Network and they said, "What's the biggest adaptation of becoming here in America?" It's like taking right on all Reds. Like you can't do that everywhere. And he was like, "Oh," and he like is he like is that like intentional or is that just the barrier there? Like I said, or I feel like he's just like a fun guy.
Yeah, he is super funny, super fun. Like he does say those things one off, and I think it's it's probably hard for the translator too sometimes because like Shota's joking, but the translator's got to like translate it in a
Right,
way where
right.
he can be like understand the joke too. And so, um, yeah, I think he is funny. He's super funny, and I think those sayings that he's saying are true, and that's just him. Like
Yeah,
I don't know. I think if roles were reversed and we were to go over to Japan or something, we would in a way kind of see that in the same light. Like when he talked about
right.
Spider-Man when he was in New York, and it's
That's a good example too.
like
Yeah.
that's what he's got to like think of when he's like, oh, I remember seeing this stuff on Spider-Man, but he just says it, whereas like maybe we wouldn't say that, wouldn't be,
I
I
think
don't
he's
know.
just
So
naturally funny, and I think it makes it so funny because his translator is I'm sure he's nice, is so like serious when he talks, and Shota's always laughing, and I feel like I'm watching like a sitcom and it's just like it kills me every time when I see it because that Sunday Night Baseball interview is so long, and
yeah,
the interpreter was so serious, stern faced the whole time. Shota was like smiling, laughing, like joking around the whole time, and it was just like I love the guy. I'm sure you do too. A couple more things, two more things actually. So back to you. You're on a 1 year deal with Chicago. If it was up to me, I'd give you 5. Like I want you on the Cubs. I love you on the Cubs.
thank you, thank you,
Like seriously, just an amazing player, clutch player. Just so fun to have. Would
thanks.
you like to re-sign with the Cubs? Number one, and number two, have those conversations that all happened? I know it's early in the season, but have there been at least any sort of indication that, hey, yeah, we can bring you back, or we would like to bring you back, or is that just something that doesn't happen until like way down the line?
Yeah, I mean, I would love to, play here forever. Great organization, great staff, great ballpark, great fans. I mean, it checks all the boxes for sure.
Yeah,
Great clubhouse in terms of like the people they have in there, the teammates, the players. But yeah, those talks will usually happen, more towards the end of the year, even the off season. Because I still have 2 more years of arbitration, so two
right,
more years of team control essentially.
right.
So um, yeah, we'll just
I'm gonna hack into the mainframe and like change like some deals up to like get you as much money as you feel fair. That doesn't like it doesn't like make any like wait this doesn't seem right and then like make you a cut because like I really want you with the Cubs. This team is awesome with you on it. This is you're a great locker room
oh,
guy, but you're
thank
also
you.
just great on the field. Fun to
Thank you.
watch.
Appreciate that.
Um, and not to brag, I play MLB the Show. You're my home run leader on my
Let's
franchise.
go.
You're always hitting. I'm sure it's great to hit home runs in real life, but I don't know. I've hit 11 of them in like 24 games with you
There
on
we
the show,
go.
so I don't know.
I like
Um,
that. I like that.
um, last question for you. Thank you for your time again.
Mm.
I mentioned all the injuries earlier, but here's the big and final question for you. And this sounds like one of those cliche things, but genuine answer, which because there's the Dodgers, obviously the heavy favorites. There's the Braves. There's all these tough teams. Um, if everyone can stay healthy, and I know we've had injuries early, if everyone can stay healthy, and again, we mentioned Shota Imanaga and we mentioned Justin Steele, but Jameson Italian 1.13 ERA, right? Javier Assad 1.66 ERA. Um,
We good?
Hold on, I can't see you now. I don't know what just happened there. We were doing so good. There we go. Okay, that was weird. All right, it gave me like a timeout. Like, okay, never
Oh
mind.
yeah, yeah.
We've had enough of you talking. All right, this pitching staff though, we knew we were gonna have Justin Steele because he was obviously All Star last year. Shota has come along in an unbelievable manner as a rookie. 0.78 ERA. So we know we have two guys, but a lot of credit to give to Wesneski, who has 0.54 ERA. Italian with a 1.13, Assad with a 1.66, I believe it is. So these are five guys. So my question going into that, with the bats, it seems like there's always at least one guy who's on. Usually it's multiple guys who are on their game. With that being said, how far do you think this team can go? Like genuinely.
Yeah, I mean, I have full belief in us. I think we can compete with any team that's out there. You just went through our staff. It's nasty. It's solid. Our bullpen's great. Our hitters are great. Our defenders are great. We do great base running. I think we check all the boxes
I do.
essentially.
Yeah, I do too.
Uh, and I genuinely have all belief, zero doubt in us. And I think most of the guys do that too. I think if you asked anyone in our clubhouse, they would have that same belief. They would believe in us and the person to the left and to the person to the right. So I think that's huge for us.
I also think that if every game was played at 120 on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday at Wrigley, that the Cubs would never lose a game ever again. Do you guys know? I don't have it off the top of my head, but I saw it the other day. And the 120 games, I'm in there every Sunday for like season tickets for the Sunday. I couldn't tell you last time I saw a loss. We won 5-0 the last one. You guys are unbelievable at like that time. I don't know if that's like when everybody's like awake or like ready. Everybody's locked in at 120 games on weekends. So,
Oh yeah.
yeah, I don't
I
know.
think the atmosphere is electric there. And just a fun place to play, and I think we're super confident going out there, in our home ballpark, and um, yeah, that atmosphere, I think it's amazing.
Yeah. Um, that's it for my questions, Patrick. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah.
Last thing, again, not a question. I hook every guest up with an official T-shirt here. I
Okay.
will send one your way. Obviously, I'm not going to have your address out in the public right now, but we can message about that. I will send one to you wherever. Love to see you repping that. And I'd love to have you back as a recurring guest at some point later in the season. This has been, at least for me, it's been fun. So hopefully, it's been at
Yeah.
least
Yeah. No,
halfway
it's been fun
enjoyable
for
for
me.
you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me on. This is great.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much. Good luck tonight. Beat the Braves, please. Sweep the Braves, please. And then
Yeah.
let's go Cubbies, all right?
Let's go. Let's go. Go Cubbies.
Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate your
Yep.
time.
Uh-huh. Anytime.